My name is Brent Ives. I am a consultant that's working with the district to help work on the issue of recreation and parks and strategic planning in the community. Some of you I remember from meetings that we had before on the strategic plan, and that's moving along, and this is going to help inform that strategic plan, this rec and park part. And so, nice to see you all again. We have tried a number of different ways to outreach this meeting and these meetings, and we've tried Facebook, and we handed out flyers at the school, or put it in the back to school back. We tried every which way we know, and so we're so glad that you're here. We're hoping some more show up, but I want you to meet who we've got here. It's so hard to know how many people are going to show. It could be 50, it could be 10 or 12. Doesn't matter. You're here, you're part of a process. The board is trying to go through a process to determine what to do with Rec and Park in Rosamond. Fair enough. Can we just turn that on? It's on my computer, I'm not here. And so that's me. I have my associates Kristen Lee Swenson here, who's right over there working the computer, and Linda Ives right here, and Jamie Lutz, who's standing over there. And from Verde Design, John Courtney's in the back. He's a kind of a parks planner guy. He knows kind of the ideas. He's built a lot of things, John has, and helped communities. And he kind of knows how much they cost, too. And that's really important for this whole process, just to see what things cost. And then Lizette from the district staff, Lizette and Vienna are here. Lizette and Vienna wave here in the back in the corner. And again, if 75 people were to show up and we had to break into groups, we wanted to make sure we had everything covered, and we may still, who knows. So, this is a process for defining the future of parks and recreational programming in Rosamond. We had a meeting a couple months ago, right here, and there's a lot of, you all know it better than I, there's a lot of history in recreation and parks in Rosamond. Some of it good and some of it hard to understand. But the bottom line is we need to have a certain clarity into the future. Somehow to get a handle on this once and for all, which way should this go? And that's something that the board would appreciate getting input on. And so that's what we're here. So we're going to look at the status of parks in Rosamond now. We'll look at what some of the options are, and then we'll discuss the process and how you're part of the process. We're going to have 3 meetings on September 6th and the 20th and October 4th. And the idea is tonight we're going to kind of talk about, well, what's possible out there? Everything's possible from nothing to a grandiose plan, right? But we all know that grandiose probably isn't going to be the answer, and maybe nothing's going to be the answer, not going to be the answer either. But we're going to at least take a look and through these 3 meetings, and we're really hoping that you'll stay with us through the 3 meetings, if you can, if there's a way for you to come, because it progresses to defining the vision and looking at the scope of possibilities, then talking about the reality of those ideas. These ideas that are up here, these just came from other meetings that we've had with the public and with the board. And so these ideas, they're the same ones, same set here. These came from things that people have already brought up at one point in time. But as we all know, the reality of it is there's a cost for every one of them if we do it. And so we need to understand that and then see how that plays into what would eventually be if the community chooses to do it. It's a community thing. The board can't unilaterally make the decision to just do that. They don't have the money to do that. But if the community decided then on a set of amenities or ideas that they could get behind, and the community decided, then it would be a community plan to move forward. But there's some water between here and there to be able to get to that point. And then so the last meeting is we'll talk turkey in terms of how much things really cost and how much that would cost, and what would happen to current ratepayers, and what would happen to the entire community if we decided that these amenities, X, Y, X through Y, were the set that we could kind of endorse and maybe recommend that the board get behind. So at the end of the 3 meetings, we're hoping that we have a set of ideas that we think this might be reasonable to let the voters decide on. But we have to just see and be able to define what reasonable is and whether or not anything would really work. And so there's some work to do. And so that's why it's important to kind of do it in steps. So what comes out of tonight, the set of ideas, John and his firm go back and look at, well, if you have that idea, it would kind of look like this. And here's the range of cost involved. I don't know if you remember, but if you were here at the earlier meeting, we talked a lot about this really needs to be the kind of approach that is no, I don't think I said baloney at the time, but it's a no baloney kind of thing. Let's decide how much is this really going to cost. And let's see if it really is affordable. Where should the line be drawn that would be a reasonable move forward for the community? So we're going to get to talk about those. If you can stay with us through the 3 meetings, we need some time to develop those. So it's an effort to collectively describe a set of supportable amenities. And I don't know what those are yet. It may be these, it may be just a set of these, it may not be these at all. But at least that's what our attempt to do is to do. So in the past, there have been some polls that said the community was ready to support improving and maintaining parks. At the public meeting in June, those attending eventually got to the point where they said, let the public decide. Fair enough, that's kind of where we're at. We're trying to go through that process. The board has said the same thing, but they want your input. They don't want to just kind of run out there with a set of things that they think the community needs. Or wants. They want to get some input first. Fair enough. And the board is also, and those in the public meeting have discussed some boundaries. In other words, nobody in those former meetings had talked about a huge 50-acre community park. Now, wouldn't that be great? Yeah, sure. If somebody gave us the money to do it and gave us the money to take care of it, that would be great. But that's probably not going to happen. It might, but that's probably not going to happen. So maybe it's not the big thing, but maybe there are some things that we can get behind. And so that's what we're looking for, is what is that set that we can say, yeah, that seems reasonable. The status today. Well, Willardford Park and the pool have been kept open for 2 years after being closed. You all remember that? The pool was filled in. They opened it back up. They borrowed some money. They borrowed some money internally. They did the district did some things to get things going again. Well, there's a cost to keeping it open, but it's more than twice the amount of the revenue from the county service area that about 1,000 people pay into annually. And there's 2 or 3 different rates in there. But people are paying, right, every year in the community service area. You all know the history probably better than I, but that community service area was supposed to be about twice as big as it really is. And what really happened is about half of it got built, and yet there's still the cost involved. The idea here is that the district can't keep the amenity, Willardford Park, any amenity that it can't support, that it can't pay for. This process needs to hear the community regarding that pool and park and the possibility of doing more, the possibility. Right now, the collection on that benefit assessment district is $112,000 a year. Only 13% of the parcels in the entire district pay that money. You can see that there are 87% that don't pay for that amenity, and so that's something that needs to be dealt with in this process. One way or the other, we're going to talk about it, we're going to be clear about what it is we can recommend, and that's the idea, is to say, is there something better? Is there a different way to do this? So the true cost of maintaining Williford Park at the level it is today is $270,000 a year. The amount they get is $112,000 a year. That means that probably the district isn't going to continue supporting it if nothing happens. If nothing happens out there to change the way the revenue to the district, then something else is going to have to happen, and they're more than likely not going to keep it open. There are several. I don't want this to be about that, though. The whole thing shouldn't be about either support the thing or it goes away. That's not what we're here to do. What we're here to do is say, does the whole community want Parks and Rec, and what does that look like? And shouldn't the whole community pay for it? And if they do, what would it cost? And what does that do to those that are currently paying for it? All those things are kind of in the mix here. And those are reasonable questions. But if we don't talk about them, then it just kind of swirls around, and it kind of churns in the district or in the community, and it never really gets dealt with. But we're hoping that this process actually deals with it. So, current park sites. You all recognize, there's Glendower. This is, okay, it's a Google Earth view of it, so a satellite took this picture. But you can see that's Glendower Park, and you might recognize that. So that's one park that you recognize. Then there's the United Street Park. There's some ball fields and things there as well. Neither one of those belong to the CSD. There's Williford Park. This one does. There's the pool, and there's the tennis courts and the basketball, and some other amenities in community. Well, it's just a community park. These are the equipment areas. And then there's this site, the blank site now. It's across from the water treatment plant's right up there. So it's across the street from the water treatment plant, called, for lack of a better term, it's called a fell site, the fell site property. But what that is a blank page. I mean, it could be developed. It could be one of the ideas. It could be all those things. Again, we have to talk about. New program and limitations. Any continued or new park and rec amenities and programs will mean a cost. I mean, you can't do something new without it costing something, but spread to the whole community. This is the board talking. So if we're going to do something, we're going to have to spread to the whole community and see what they will or won't support. The current limited area assessment will be replaced by this community-wide assessment. In other words, the hope and the thought would be, at least at this juncture, would be the day that a district-wide parcel tax or something like that goes into place, that the benefit assessment district would cease. And you'd pay that one instead of this one, or it would be a different rate perhaps, but everybody would pay the same. That's the thought. The type and breadth of parks and recreation would be something this group can recommend to the board of directors. Again, with options perhaps. And that program will be constrained, what gets recommended will be constrained by what most citizens are willing to support, right? It's a vote. Are you willing to support this? There are a number of different ways to do it. It's not just always a parcel tax. There are a number of different ways to kind of do it. It's always a vote, but there are a number of ways to do it. But how big the program that gets recommended is will have some relevance or constrained by how much we all kind of collectively think is the kind of what I call the tolerance of the community to pay to their property tax, perhaps, or other assessment kind of means. So the process is to begin to find the park and rec opportunities. That's what this meeting is about. And then get realistic a look at those. The general cost range, that's the next meeting. And then finalize a recommended program options to forward to the board and look at ways and means to support that cost. That's the October 4th meeting. So, we'll hear from you on these ideas and more during our group discussions tonight. And then we'll take a look at some of what has been discussed so far. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Kristen, who's going to kind of lead us through what's been talked about so far. But, just 1 second. What kinds of questions and thoughts do you have already? It's really important that we understand the situation well. We understand where we're at as a community, where you're at as a community. And do you get where we're at, say, and where we're trying to go with this? If you have questions, now's a good time to ask that setting. Yes, ma'am.
How is it different from what we did probably 10 years ago, the same thing? And when it came to a vote, people were willing to have Parks and Rec separate on the ballot, which was a mistake. And then would they be willing to pay for it?
Right.
No. And our voter turnout is always very low. So
I guess
something has got to change about getting those people to vote.
You're so right. And I think this is a little bit of a difference. What we're doing here is we're trying to kind of ease into it rather than just say, here's the vote, either do it or don't, pay for it or not. We're trying to kind of come up with what, remember I said that one term, supportable amenities. Maybe we can find some, maybe we can. Rich?
Yeah, this is the first one of these meetings I've been to, but my gut feeling on this is there's really no support for any of this.
Yeah?
I know, speaking for myself, to say we're going to spend money on parks and recreation, we can't even get a police station in this town.
Yeah.
It's like, that's a hard sell. It's a hard sell for me.
Fair enough.
I'm going to come to these because I really want to see where we're going and what,
Right.
you know.
Well, we appreciate it. And that, I think that reflects the sentiment of a lot of people is, how is this going to work? Will it work? And I'm sure, I know the board feels the same way. They're saying, we better try to go find out. And like I said earlier on, we tried very hard to reach your community and get people in this meeting. The pool, every place we could think of, we tried to touch and tried to get the word out. So, Rich, as you point out, you know, how do you get this, and you as well, ma'am, how do you get the community behind something like this? You've got to at least give them a chance to have some input. We know that.
I think the biggest concern for a lot of people is really a fair rate of who's in what.
Fair enough. Yeah.
You know, I agree with everything everybody's saying, but it'd be nice to have a breakout on where everybody's paying right now. Because approximately 1,000 people paying.
Yeah.
Okay, we know where the lion's share is West Park.
Yes.
Whatever, 50, 90 houses.
Right. We could, yeah.
It would be nice to have a breakout on that.
We can do that the next, that's a good.
Because I'm an
let's
angry
break it out
taxpayer
next
right
week.
now. I say close it up.
Okay.
They've not even maintained it properly, but that's what this right.
Fair enough. And again, we need to understand those concerns as best as possible, talk about them and not let them kind of just pass us by and it just, like I said, it just churns in the community. Other thoughts, questions?
Yeah, I'm trying to understand, what is our project here? Is just the park, $270,000 running a year just for pool? Or is it be another $50,000 for a park thing, for a dog run that we should suggest? I want to know exactly what we're all here for. What's the 5 items we're discussing?
Well, it doesn't have a number, but
What the
yes,
paper says.
it includes the, what do you do with Williford Park?
What are they
But then
doing
it
right
could
now?
include more. And then, again, we're going to try to develop that together. But there's not a specific number, not really. We're just saying, look, let's start with that and see if, let's start making the list and try to do some work on prioritizing the list. And then see what that list would cost and then see, is that real at all?
Does it even fit in with the general manager's strategy? Does he have a strategy?
Yes.
It's obvious he doesn't, because he's not even maintaining the park now.
Well, he's working on that out into the future. What he's doing now is spending
Spending my
200.
money.
Yeah, absolutely.
Unwisely.
I mean, you go to the park now, there's no water faucets nowhere.
Right.
Kids are in the playground, you can't even get a drink of water. You go in the bathroom, you can't even wash your hands, there's no water.
Yeah.
So there's nothing going on.
So it makes it a harder sell, is what
Well,
you're saying.
I'm telling you, then half the park right now
And
is
if they're
dead.
concerned,
The other half is green right now, because they got a leak behind the playground area, behind the tennis courts, behind the basketball. Go down and shoot baskets, run into the brick wall, you're going in through mud, there's mosquitoes, everything there.
Yeah.
But they got it turned off, there's a leak, but it's still full of water. They're not even fixing it. I mean, the park's not being taken care of. And that's my biggest complaint is, if they can't take care of it now, I can't see what you're gonna, just like gentleman said, I can't see you guys, none of us here saying you can go forward with it.
Fair enough. Gotcha.
We used to go on the playground in the back, it took me a year and a half, she knows, of complaining to put new cement just around the playground area. It was all broken down. I mean, there's a accident, injury gonna happen if something wasn't done. They finally did that. But we had green grass back there, now you go back there, it's weeds and dirt, you can't have your kids run around. There's no play area for the kids or nothing back there anymore.
you have broken sprinklers laying there.
I mean, the park's just not being taken care of, and that's my thing. Oh God, I wish we could have this 270. Is this 270 for the whole year?
That's how much they.
Or is that just to run the
That's how
pool
much
for
they
3
spend
months?
to run the pool and
For 3 months.
do what they're doing, yeah.
Okay,
And so, you see, that is generally the issue that we're dealing with. But you're right, how do you build enough confidence to be able to go to another step?
I just want to ask one more question. John, project manager,
Yes, sir.
have you been down to the park and looked at it?
Yeah, I did that earlier today.
You walked through it and looked at it?
Yes, sir, I did.
And what's it look like to you?
Well, it needs some work. I'll concur with everything that you said.
Okay, as long as I know you looked at it,
yes,
so we
sir.
know what we're talking about tonight.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
That's more than our general manager seems to do.
Ma'am?
When these meetings were planned, is there something that maybe we don't know? Is there hope for some grant that, I mean, we talked about it before, there seemed to be no one who could write a grant. And now we've got the solar companies coming in, handing out money to different parts of Rosamond. Is there something we don't know? Is there something in the background that's a possibility to support somebody?
Sure, and there's always the idea, see, I think the general concern is the community voted to have it, but they voted not to pay for it, left all the bill with one benefit assessment district. And so there's this generalized feeling in the district that we've got to deal with that issue, one way or the other. And it could be, look, if let's just say we came up with a set of amenities that went to the board, and the board said, okay, that'll cost, I'm gonna just throw something out, just something around, $100 a year per parcel. And they put it on the ballot and it went down in flames. What does the district do? They're gonna be done. They're gonna be out of it, they're gonna shut things down, they're gonna give it back, they're gonna do their best to give it back, right? There's some issues with that, but they're gonna be done once and for all. So instead of doing that, what they're trying to do is, can we see if there is a willingness in some portion of the community or enough of the community to be able to support enough to be able to take care of what we've got and maybe even add more if they choose to do so. That's,
May I ask you make something for me?
yes.
It seems like it's always been around when you look around the road, and most of us aren't people that have young children that need these. But we're the ones that turn out and vote. Now, a lot of people that are on fixed income aren't going to vote any kind of taxation of any kind, any new fees. So is there some idea about how this, seems like it's always been the problem here, is how do we get, we're almost like a bedroom community. How do we get all of those people to get down there and vote? They are the very ones who complain, is the parents with children. We don't have anything here for the kids to do, yada, yada. So we're moving to Lancaster. Did you vote when you were here? Well, the mayor doesn't do anything. Do you know this isn't a town? Do you know there isn't a mayor? They don't No.
Yeah. And, you know, this is to some degree a reflection of that, how hard it is to get the whole community to see it and understand it and say, yeah, we should or shouldn't do something about it, once and for all. And that's pretty much what this is about. Let me tell you, if, in general terms, grants will be handed to agencies that can partner with the grants to leverage the dollars. That puts you in a much better position to be able to get grants. To be able to say, no, we're not responsible for the whole thing. We're going to pay for 40% of it, and the district's going to pay for 60%. Well, right now, the district can't pay for any percent. And so the hope, and this is only a hope, is that to have some money that is designated for recreation and parks, you can leverage. And it's worked in my experience a number of times when I was a mayor in our community, and because you know, these grant givers, they want to see some kind of skin in the game, right? So that is some reason to hope. That doesn't mean that companies won't go around and say, hey, we'd like to pay for a kids' playground called the Solar City Kids Playground. I don't know what it could be. But you've got to have the opportunity for them to do something like that. And that's, again, gets back to the fundamental decision. Is Rosamond going to not only want Parks and Rec, but actually be willing to, in a global sense, pay for it?
I think a key issue too, I know it is for me, there's a couple of good ideas on here I'd be willing to support. Key issue for me is where you're going to put it in town. And if it's on the east side of the 14, you got to know from me. It's like, see, now my neighbors and stuff, there's more than a little resentment about the $1 million we spent redoing Diamond Street. You got the worst part in town, you spend $1 million redoing Diamond Street. The only ones who benefited are certain families who own a lot of property on that street.
That's called Diamond Street?
Diamond Street was a paved project, was it?
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. With the pot dispensaries, as far as I'm concerned, everything on that side of the freeway is a dead zone. I go to Sister's, Foster Freeze, and Chevron. Everything else is a no-go zone.
You would think instead of this water district being a park and rec, this would be an RMAC. Because they're the closest thing to the mayor and the city council. Where are they at? How come they're not here?
RMAC? I don't know, I know we got the word out
You know,
to school
If
boards and
anything, we should be
RMAC.
working together with RCSD and RMAC.
Well, we're going to spend some time with them. We're going to share what we learned. But, you know, and RMAC is an advisory board, a group to
Right, to the county.
county supervisor.
The county was smart. They unloaded this and they quick deeded it to the RCSD. But they got the other part. The other parcel you showed belonged to the school district.
Right,
The one on United.
right.
And the school district is nice enough to open the gate and let us use the track, you know, for the most part over there. And I'm sure if we abuse it, it would be locked up on us.
Well, you don't want to abuse it, that's for sure. Other thoughts, questions? I mean, again, let's be real about this. Yes, ma'am.
I just, you know, I appreciate the foresight to the future to have all this stuff, but I'm kind of like with him, like, you know, let's just try to figure out what we have now because it's not safe, you know, to even play with brick. Well, the quality and the caliber of what we have now needs to be looked at, and also, I just, my experience with the kids is that there really needs to be access for handicap and handicap swing.
Yeah. So, yeah, more
So that
fundamental
everyone
look,
can
yeah.
use it.
Yeah. So take care of what you got and take care of it right. Do it right.
Just, yeah.
Okay. Good night.
And I say, even if we get all of these things, get a percentage of them, and you don't have the sheriff department here in order to protect the people that's going to be going to those places and what have you, it's almost like you're working to get this, but then you're not going to want your kids to go there because the drugs coming into Rosamond like this, it certainly isn't going to be safe be in any public place. That's my view. Because where drugs are, gangs eventually will come in. And we have, it just doesn't seem feasible to do something like this. You don't even have police to come by from the sheriff department. Now they are here in the water company, but how many is it? It's not enough to protect both of them.
Did Bakersfield used to now, didn't they just have the paper that they're gonna be controlling every unincorporated area, how much it's gonna be, how many places, and they are allowing 2 only in Rosamond.
It's not good for
So
much revenue.
I don't know.
Are you talking about county sheriff?
Assignments?
That's what the county is gonna allow.
So when you say Bakersfield, you mean county?
That's county seat.
Okay. That's certainly a good RMAC issue. I know that's indeed where you're supposed to express those. We hear what many of you are saying. What we're trying to do is say, it may be just the fundamentals, it may be the fundamentals plus some, but see, just understanding what that cost and what it would take to get broad support for just taking care of what we got is worth talking about and understanding and saying, is there more or is that it? Or is that even possible? That's kind of where we're at.
Okay, we just lost $158,000 just operating the park this summer. Because it only brought in 112 this year. That's 270,000 operated, right?
That's right.
So where's that 158 gonna come out this year from? The general funds of the water district?
Yeah, my
You
understanding
gotta
is
quit
that,
rating, this is the last year, they told us, what, a couple meetings ago?
my understanding is it's not, is that they're done. And so they need to know how to proceed again.
But they haven't stopped taxing us.
No,
and spending
the
our
benefit
money.
assessment district is something you stop when you know you're not only done, but.
They've never stopped it before.
Well, no,
Stop it now.
no.
That's
That's 22 years of history.
a big fundamental problem we're having with this whole park issue. I know, talking with my neighbors and stuff, there isn't an organization in town anybody cares less than the Rosamond Community Service District.
I'm sorry, what last, Rich, I'm sorry.
RCSD,
Yes.
there's not an organization that exists that anybody in this town hates worse. And to have them controlling the parks, you're gonna lose, seriously, you're gonna lose 75% of all support just with who's managing the program.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Well,
that's the biggest issue you got. There's
Who else
some,
could it?
I'm sorry.
I just wondering who else could it be?
Well,
RMAC in Kern County.
RMAC has nothing to do
But
with
Kern County
authority.
is got the parks and rec.
yeah, RMAC has no jurisdictional authority but they can make recommendations to the
They're
supervisor.
vocal.
They're supposed to be the listening ear from the county supervisor to, on county issues.
We sure don't want the board of supervisors controlling money.
Well, and you know, if RCSD or some other jurisdiction here, and there really aren't very many. There's RCSD, there's the schools, and RMAC isn't set up or isn't in a position to take care of things. That's not what they do. They listen. And so in terms of governmental organizations to take care of somebody else, Rich?
yeah, whoever takes over, all they're gonna want is money. We cannot pay in support for what we have now, and we have very grandiose plans, but
Well,
You got a sign on the boulevard that says community swimming pool. Okay? It's not the communities. It's the 1,000 people that are paying the taxes. Make that very clear. It doesn't belong to the community. It started off with the West Park. West Park pool. We, the West Parkers.
Right, $112,000 a year is where it comes from that benefit assessment.
yeah, and the idea of, I don't know what our population is, and I'll say 24,000. But to tax 23,000 people for a pool that 1,000 people use, if they can't make that thing run on its own by the people who use it, close it. Fill it up with dirt.
Yeah.
I mean, I got no kids, I'm not using a public pool because I'm in my block, you know.
Anybody can use it, and they have senior exercise there,
I'm
and they
saying.
have kids swimming lessons.
Yeah, I don't care. I wouldn't use a public pool in this day and age.
we use the park a lot, and then recently we don't use the park at all. It's like the last few months or whatever, it's just significantly, you can just visually, without even pulling into the park or even parking or getting out of your car, you can just see that there's just a lack of something going on. And it's little bit by little bit, it's gradual, it's not anything major, it's just a little bit like, you know, and we had birthday parties for the kids at the park, and we can't do that anymore because it's just, it's not even somewhere where they want to go. But that we used to use it all the time, it was the only place the kids wanted to go. And now, in the last few months, you know, and then my husband just discourages them from going over there because it just looks like it's not safe enough. And like it says, there's no water fountains and, I don't know. I mean, it needs to be a combination of some of these ideas that you have here, and also a way to somehow police van or whatever, when things aren't open, and sometimes during the day, spontaneously, even if it's once a month, or, you know, there needs to be, so that, you know, the parents can feel comfortable with some of these ideas, you know.
And feel, and it's kind of what Rich is saying, CSD, are they the right one to take care of it? But again, the options are limited, so here we are in that classic conundrum of wanting some good things, but not completely confident that they could really happen. But if I can tell you, if nothing happens, then that's what will happen. And that doesn't seem, you know, there is some money that comes from the county, but very little money comes from the
Our confidence has deteriorated because the people that are in charge of maintaining it don't maintain it. And everything they've been charged to maintain, they don't maintain adequately, with the exception of the water. So they ought to stick to that.
Can you find out maybe if there's more people that can umbrella the Wilford Park and just umbrella it through the whole community rather than it just being, you know, because the kids really like it there.
Yeah, I got you. And it you could make a list of things that wouldn't be nice
The
if.
pool's one thing, but the
There's a
playground
rest
is
of the
all year round.
And tennis courts and.
Yeah, and the
Sure.
kids are exercising and riding their bikes.
You know. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, right.
Park their car.
I was thinking it'd
I'm
be,
sorry.
It's all,
She's got.
I think it'd be great to do like a co-op where, you know, the kids, like in each, you know, neighborhood, have like a park on a vacant land and the kids can pitch in. And-
To help kind of,
Yeah, like
on occasion.
behind my house, we have vacant land and like all the houses around and there's a lot of kids. And like if we did like a little, like a walkway and benches and have a garden area,
We're
and the
gonna-
kids would have to work.
Yeah, like
I know
the
you
boys
got here
and
real
girls
late, but we're going to
club.
talk about ideas here in just a minute. So I'm going to let Kristen talk about that, but not getting too far away from the baseline. We know that that's, we hear that.
Well, we use it as a community area.
Yeah?
Who's behind the event center?
It's the chamber.
The event?
No, right next door to the Chamber of Commerce, they're building a new event center.
Oh.
Is that going to be?
Terry Lansing will like it.
Is that a private thing? The event center?
It was part of the 20-year plan.
It's a community thing.
A while back.
So is that, the funding for that is coming out of the county then?
It's coming out of the chamber.
I'm sorry?
It's coming from the chamber.
Are they
Got-
asking
they got
all the
grants.
businesses to?
So the businesses are supporting it, yes, event center. Okay, Kristen, just go through some of the options quick, and then we'll talk about what we think makes sense, okay?
So one of the things I heard earlier, we want to just talk a little bit about these ideas. What we want to hear from you about is in relationship to these ideas. And also we've got piles of post-it notes back there for new ideas. If there's other ideas that we want to add to it, that's all great too. We just really want input. One of the things that has been really important that we've heard through the board is that we want to get a realistic set of ideas on it. on the table. So that's one of the reasons we wanted to get going with this group. Folks that aren't here tonight, we're going to do outreach for groups that we don't see represented here tonight, just to get a more full picture here. But so these different ideas, so covering the Williford Park pool has been talked about. The possibility for that could make it a year-round facility. So love to get any input on that. But when we're talking about Williford Park pool, we may have other ideas that are related to that current site right now. So capture all of that too. Like, I love the thought about it needs to be more accessible. Let's get that down and add that into one of the important things about that site and that facility.
And I'll add, one of the things about covering the pool would enable it to stay warmer and more, usable and comfortable to use, when it gets colder, even in the morning when it's kind of chilly. That would help keep the heat in.
What's baseline cost on covering a pool? How many hundred thousands for that?
Probably about $300,000.
Yeah, not happening, not happening.
Okay. Well, and then I will add too, there are some repair things that I'm making a list of, this gentleman pointed out earlier, that need to be done. Like, there's some pool deck, some cracks in the pool deck that need to be repaired, and some other things that have to be fixed in that park. That's a baseline, basically, right?
Yeah. So next one is ideas have been raised around a possible skate park and possibly a bike pump track. And John, maybe you could mention about the possibility to do both in the same site.
Yeah, those could be combined just for efficiency. You could do an all-concrete skate park that you could then also ride bikes in as well. And you would just say, okay, Tuesday is going to be the skate day, and then Wednesday is the bike day, and Thursday is the skate day, and kind of go back and forth. And there are some facilities where the kids just they take turns, and the bikes and the skateboards can all be happening on the same time, the same day. I've seen it work just as well that way too. But the picture on the top is just a really inexpensive dirt pump track is what it's called. The kids really like that because they can get in there with their shovels and they can actually change the jumps, and they can tweak it and make it more fun for them, and then it's not boring, the same thing all season long. And it's really an affordable thing to do, and it's a very popular activity. The skate park is obviously more expensive because you want to make sure that it's lighted and it's very safe. It's all concrete, so it's more expensive. But I have seen, ironically, I have seen swimming pools turn into skate parks because they're concrete, right? It's not quite as simple as that, but I've heard of that. So.
Do you know, I'm not sure if his name, Rob Dietrich, the guy that
Yes.
had the skateboard
Right.
show?
Can you repeat that, John?
I heard that he's donating, communities that need a skate park, that he donates the materials.
Occasionally, yeah, I mean, if you get really lucky, she's speaking about a couple of foundations that actually will come to a community and they'll bring money and they'll actually do some of the work for you, but their money is limited, so it's kind of like a lottery. If you're lucky and you win it, great.
Yeah.
But yeah, they're trying to promote skating as a positive thing for teenagers to do. Yes.
Along these lines, I think it's nice for, I don't have any kids, but it's nice for them to have something to do. My one concern with these ideas are, what is Rosamond's liability? One of these kids is going to fall, break their back, and they're going to say it wasn't maintained properly, and they're going to sue.
Rosamond is covered under a joint powers insurance policy, so there are many districts and cities and counties that do skate parks, and the insurance is basically a pool, it's a risk pool, so you won't, the liability for that is basically covered through the insurance policy.
Okay, I just want to check, because I know the little skate park they had over here for a while, some of the kids will wear helmets, some wouldn't.
Right.
And I'm like, somebody's going to get hurt, and there's, this is California.
What we're going to do is we're going to give you more time at your table to talk about the specifics of the ideas. But Kristen, we're going to move through these, and then we're going to get some input, and then we'll move to the next stage.
And we want to capture concerns like that too. We just want to get all the details up there. So in your groups, we'll do that. So covered picnic area, that's something that could be an add-on to an existing park, something that can happen out at the Williford Park, something like that. Dog park is again something that can be fairly inexpensive. There's all kinds of ways. You've probably seen them where they're just gated fields of dirt, basically, but then there's also much nicer ways to do it. Water spray ground park. The way they're done now, they really kind of can recycle the water and can be very minimal on the water usage. At the same time, it's really fun for kids and possible add-on at an existing site. Small amphitheater for some outdoor. You have some great weather here a lot of the times of year, so that's a possibility. Movie in the park area, we understand that that's something that used to happen in the community and that some people have mentioned it and would like to see that come back somehow, and that's something that could certainly be on the lower end cost of things. Community center, yes, that's a big one, but it's been talked about in terms of a place for seniors to go for activities, programming, so something that was raised. Outdoor exercise track course, this is something, again, sometimes businesses want to get involved in partnering with, but something that can be, have maybe some outdoor mobile fitness stations with a track that can, for running or biking or things. Kids playground, again, you know, we've raised some of the things about Williford Park Pool and that playground and some work that maybe needs to happen, but also is it an add-on to another site? And with all of these, and also just separately, when you're talking in your groups, the idea about programming in general, if we have a pool, do we want to have programming that's running out of that pool, such as swimming classes or, you know, senior classes, or if there's a community center, then you certainly probably want programming to happen. So we want to talk about programming in relationship too and get some sense of the importance of that. So now we're going to take some time in your group. So if you're seated at a table, you're already kind of in a group. If you're not at a table, we'd love for you to move to a table. So we can, because we've got recorders for each table, and we're going to kind of talk through the ideas, but we're also going to open it up for other ideas. And your facilitators will move you through that. We're going to spend about, let's see, 20 minutes or so, 30 minutes. And then we're going to hear back. We're going to put the ideas up, and then we'll talk more about what we're going to do next.
Maybe you could pull us around this
Take your
table.
pulse on it. Play the dots really quick. Each group recorder, we've got some glue sticks, and we're going to put up the additional ideas. Any new ideas can go up on these blank posters over here. And then our notes about the existing ideas we'll put up there. So we'll be doing that right now. When they're done, we'll put on a little music. And we're gonna, you're each gonna get a sheet of dots. And if you need more, you can let us know. But we want to get your pulse on the ideas. So this is your perfect time to say, you know what, I'm not interested in a dog park. I'm not putting a dot there. Or I'm very interested in having movies in the park come back, and I'm putting a dot there. If you feel really strongly and you want to put 2 dots there, that's okay. What we want to do is get a sense from all of us that are here how strongly you feel about these different ideas. Because that'll give us a sense of...
Or different ideas.
Or different ideas, because there's going to be new ideas that come forward. And, you know, maybe we should take a minute to talk about the new ideas. How many of you have new ideas at your table?
This table has
Station count?
Okay.
2.
Let's do the new ideas. Talk
That's a good
about this
idea.
just for 1 second.
Yeah.
So, John, do you want to say from your group the new ideas?
Shall I? Yeah, 2 new ideas. One would be a softball field, because that's really, it sounds like it's a need in the community. Obviously, we need to go in a newer park area because there's no room to fit it in an existing park, but that was a new suggestion. The other one would be to convert the swimming pool into into a spray ground and combine that with a covered picnic area, because you would then have more room to put a covered picnic area. Yeah, and then you're combining those two together, and you reduce the cost of maintaining that pool. It's a lot cheaper to take care of the splash pad than it would be to take care of the pool. So those are the two new ideas.
Great. What about this group? Deanna, your group having some new ideas?
Well, we kind of like the covered picnic area, but we want to put some add-ons, like maybe like a walkway around it,
Exercise wall.
you know, so.
So we can add that to the one we've got on the wall. Good. You've got that note on there,
And a water fountain.
or the water
They want
fountain?
a water fountain.
You know, a drinking water fountain or a?
No, drink.
All right, is that it, Dan?
Yes, sir.
Okay. How about this table back here?
Right here. She's right there.
Okay. Was that, did you have new ideas?
Well, they specifically wanted to see a dog park that was gated at Fell site, as well as a hiking trail and workout stations at the Fell site. So all of these items are.
Okay. What else? Any other, Kristen, at your table, do you have new ideas?
Jamie will help me. There's one up here I've got to deliver to her, which was stars in the park. So maybe having some telescopes come out and looking at the night sky. It's kind of more of a programming. We have to have some programming for that, but doing some looking at the stars and the planets in the park. The other idea that came up was having a spot for paintball location. She said, okay, so we're ready for your dots. So at each table, there should be a stack of dots, so I'm sure everybody has.
She's explaining. So, go ahead, you got
So what we're gonna do with the dots is you're gonna,
everybody please listen up so you can hear this.
so we're gonna kind of form a line and kind of pass by, all of these different options, including the new ones over here and the programs part that's over here. And just put a dot where you feel there's a good idea that the community needs, that you could support if there were the money. The money part we're not going to worry about on this dotting unless you feel super strongly it's something that is not needed at all and you can cast your dot that way. Keep it off. So, and if you feel very strongly, you can put 2 dots on an idea. That's fine. So, because what we want to do is just get a sense from everybody what ideas you like, what ideas, aren't a good match for this community maybe. So we get a sense from all of you. Okay. And the colors don't mean anything. We're just looking for like volume of dots. So yeah, good question. So just put dots wherever you feel you want it on each of the options. So, and also,
You played that song as well?
everybody have their dots? Yes. Okay, great.
I'm a 63. Is that okay if he plays that song?
You already have these. All they gotta do is improve. You know, the kids area is already there, make improvements and constantly make improvements, but they better make ADH compliance, you know? Bellside, that's that piece of property they got up there, that's where I would put the bike park.
Okay, okay, so where are we putting it up from here? Put my glasses on.
Well, that's all parked, yeah. Yeah, but you already got a little league field and everything, so you're just giving different size. Bellside, yeah.
So I can finish this up. And again, this doesn't mean anything except that now we're gonna look at, well, what would something like that cost? And if you add all those costs up, what would that be to the community if you funded it this way or that way, if that were to even have any chance at all? And so we're just trying to take this step at a time, and we'll look at these things kind of in this order. At the next meeting, we'll come back and we'll, same time and place, with some graphic detail about these, a little bit more developed perhaps. And then we'll look at some concept of the cost range of these and begin constructing the options to provide for board consideration. Again, there's nothing that gets cast in concrete by this group. The board's got to take action on it, but we can come up with what we think are good ideas. You know, some of these did pretty well. There's one behind the bike pump track. It's got a lot in the covered picnic area. Those would all be great. We'll, you know, those kinds of things. Some of these, the paint. A lot of you voted for the paintball thing, and so that's kind of cool. The point is, though, we'll look at these and we'll go on. That's it, folks. I want to tell you, please stay with us throughout this process, because that will make it more. Because now you know we've worked on it together. We've talked about it. So let's go to the next stage and find out what that means, and then let's go to the next stage and kind of find out what that would actually cost, and see if that's even within the realm of possibility. But we know that there's constraints here. We know that there's history here. We know that it won't be easy, and there's some work to do to rebuild or to try to build the community's confidence in this thing too. All that is going into the mix, and our task is to send that message back. So on the 20th, I hope to see you all again, and we will try our best to put more detail to these priorities you put up here tonight, and see where it goes. Any further last questions or comments, ma'am?
Do you have any sense of those pictures, and do you want us to get more people to come for next time?
Yes.
And by doing that, I need a second.
I'm going to have them, fair enough. And the district contact is Lizette. And so if you'd like, you can talk to her on the way out, give her your, we don't mind at all sharing this with this, you know, it's probably it's a pretty big file though. You know, if we share it electronically, but we'd be happy to, or we can make some copies perhaps for you, and we can get those pictures for you, these, I guess, if that's what you're after. So yeah, we can work with you on that. Yep.
Is it okay before we all leave if Tracy could play a song?
Sure.
It's called Where Did the Children Play?
Did you make up a song for this event?
No. You are an artist.
Yeah. I wish I could put it on here. It won't be very hard.
No.
Let me get this. Summer